Mental health and well-being is increasingly becoming a focus in the mining industry, where challenging work conditions and high-pressure environments can significantly impact workers' psychological health. Today, we're joined by a wellness specialist with extensive experience in supporting mental health programs across mining operations. She'll help us understand challenges faced by miners and explore strategies for creating mentally healthier workplaces.
Lerato Lekomanyane is a renowned well-being specialist, researcher, and mental health advocate who has dedicated her career to transforming workplace psychological support with a laser-focused expertise in the mining industry's unique mental health landscape. Today, Lerato will share transformative strategies for creating supportive and psychologically safe work cultures that recognizes mental health as a fundamental component of workplace excellence and individual thriving.
Right. Lerato, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
You are a mental health specialist, you are an advocate for mental health as well, and you are big in the wellness space. Maybe just talk to us about your journey into the wellness space.
Okay, so basically how it started, it just started with me studying. Studied psychology, and then from there, it was just me seeing clients. So after that, then it moved from me doing community work, community psychology and stuff like that, until one day in the government sector, they said they needed someone that will do programs on well-being. So then at the time, I'm like, what is this well-being? And then only to realize it's like a holistic spectrum of program that focuses on different things. So that's when I started, then went into the government sector. Later on, did programs. We called it the in-house program. So in-house basically means you do the counseling, you do proactive programs, you prepare stress management presentation, financial wellness presentation and stuff like that, and also sports, right? And then I moved from that. I then went to another government sector, but there my responsibility was to make sure that I help managers develop well-being programs. So that's how my well-being program started. Then later on moved into the mining sector.
Your passion for wellness is commendable. Maybe talk to us about what is it about your personal experience has brought you to do the work that you do and the way you do it, because it seemingly comes from a deeper place.
So with, like I said, it started off with me being interested in people, right? And for me, the perspective was, how do I help society become better? Human behavior. I was very inquisitive about the human behavior. Why do we behave the way that we do and stuff like that, you know? But what I realized then with the well-being program is that your role is not just there to say, how do I fix it? You come up with innovative ways of saying, let me come with preventative programs. So it was that challenge of, okay, what is prevention? What kind of things can I bring in to change behavior from a preventative point of view? So, and you see that with helping people through the well-being program, people change. So it's not just employees, but sometimes you also impact families, communities in the long run. So that then became something that drives me, you know, something that I felt, you know what, if I can make an impact in one employee's life, I'm not just impacting him, but I'm also impacting his family and the community. So I think that's the thing that has driven me in terms of the being in the well-being space.
Mental health was not something historically spoken about. It was not even a thing. But of recent, it's almost like a buzzword. What has changed over the years? And I mean, with it being a buzzword now, what impact does that have? Is it effective even?
You know what? Mental health has always been there. If you know, a lot of programs will start by policies being developed from the government space. So it has always been there. There was the Mental Health Act in 2002. However, because mental health is something that is not seen, right? Versus physical illness. Mental health is something that is not tangible. You can't touch it, right? And mental health, there's a lot of stigma. Before, even now, there was a lot of stigma around it. So it's something that was hidden. So in terms of even funding, you would find that even back then, the funding towards mental health was not that big. But however, the biggest change came with COVID. Not that mental health was not there before. It has always been there. But it became a buzzword in the workplace after COVID. Workplaces did not know any longer how do we assist employees? Employees are going through a lot of anxiety. You remember that pandemic? They're losing their loved ones. They are getting sick physically. They are worried about their family members. People were losing jobs. So there were a lot of changes that were taking place and people could not be productive. So how it became a buzzword for the workplace is that it was not only affecting individuals. Obviously, employees are needed. They're like the drivers of the workspace and stuff like that. So how it affected, if they get affected, the organization gets affected, families got affected. So I think then they then realized that as the workplace, that this is something that we then need to deal with. And how do we do it? So you would find that at that point in time, people are like, we don't know. So I'll just even make an example in terms of the well-being program. Well-being programs have been there, luckily, but not all organizations have had well-being programs. But at that particular time, employee well-being programs started being like top of, key thing in the organization. Because now leaders, they did not know how to deal with employees that are going through turmoil, distress, emotional distress, employees that are booked off sick for long period of time. So that's when then it started being a buzz and things had to happen. Researchers had to come in, practitioners, professionals. What is it that we can do to assist employees? So I think that's how it became then a buzzword. Then everybody started talking about it. And it being still a buzzword, it does not mean that people understand it. Sometimes people don't understand it. So now we misdiagnose people. We label people. As soon as you see a person, this person is suicidal, this person is distressed, this depression, this person is anxious, and lack of knowledge. So it being also a buzzword, there's also terms that are just thrown in as and when. So that's how I think it then came into the workspace.
Sure. Let's look at the big picture. I mean, we are in the mine space. What unique challenges are faced by mining employees that relate into their mental well-being?
Okay. So in the mining space, as we all know, mining is an environment. Well, let me not assume that everybody knows, but mining is an environment or a workspace where a lot of people come in from. It's a highly stressful environment, first of all. Production is the order of the day.
For sure.
People have to be productive every day, all day. There's no such a time where one can take a break, right? And people would then leave. Obviously, looking at South Africa's socio-dynamic challenges, people will then leave their homes to come into the mining space to make money for their families. The mining environment has been, even in the past, like I don't want to say it's a hazard, but it has been that work environment that is very stressful because of the nature of the environment. And you would find that people will then leave their homes, come into this work environment that is big on safety. Right? And they have to then work in this environment, dark, underground. They have to work long hours. They work shifts. So the work environment in itself is not similar to a person that is working in the office, right? They must wake up very early in the morning, be at work. Physically, it's very draining. And you don't see the sun, so you are underground, So these complexities as well. Sometimes people are thinking, what if something goes wrong with my child? Can they contact me immediately? But in the mining environment, then they say, you know what, the best thing is when you're underground, focus, So these are some of the things sometimes that people don't think about that makes mining a bit different from other environments. So also being away from home. So it's not just being away from home for 2 hours or whatever. People live very far. You would find people coming from different provinces. You meet different cultures. So this acculturation, you know, in the mining space also has an impact in terms of people's, how they relate to each other, their well-being and stuff like that. The environment itself, you know, sometimes there's a lot of people that work underground, you know, and that setting that, oh, now I have to, if you're an introvert, you must snap out of it fast, you know, and be like, I have to. And the dynamics now in mining, it's no longer men only. And there's also females. The power dynamics. So all these things have an impact on individuals one way or the other, socially and also individuals. So that's how mining environment is different. But in terms of, let's say, how does it then affect people in terms of mental health? Okay, so what we found is people start very early. Some in that particular environment, they leave school quite early. Why? Because the economic situation in South Africa is dire. So they go and work, and when they go and work, you get a salary, and you are not prepared and ready for that salary, right? And you find that a lot of young people have never been exposed to money. And now it's a competition between, you know, with the youngsters, even old, we find elderly people there. They start now showing off, buying luxurious cars, wanting to live in luxurious homes, or they don't mind, or they can just rent a smaller house as long as they drive the biggest cars. Socially, they start attracting people. So even when they go to clubs or taverns or whatever, it's about who has the biggest money. They start spending. So that thing in itself has an impact, because in the long run, we find that they then do not concentrate on their families. Sometimes it happens. High HIV rate, high sexual, they call it STI, sexual transmitted infection rate. Financially, they become overburdened because they have bought all these things. And at home, there's the burden of, where are you? When are you coming home? When are you sending money? So that in itself creates a lot of distress. And when they have also worked, let's say in the underground or whatever, and they find that it's heavy for them, they go back home to who? Because their family members are not here. When their child is sick, it's not easy for them to just up and leave. So for them, it becomes that separation of not having a support system. It impacts on them a great deal versus a person maybe that's working closer from home. So what do? They drink a lot. Alcohol becomes the order of the day. Spending, gambling becomes the order of the day. And then because in mining sector, the bulk of mining sector, zero tolerance on alcohol. And what do? Then they don't come to work, which then impacts productivity. So the more it impacts productivity, then your senior, your leader is on you. Why are you not coming to work? This and that. You would find that then the person starts getting distressed. It's like, oh, this guy is always behind me. Why this? And as a way, all of these things have an impact, can impact one.
Lerato, we spend most of our days at work, most parts of our days at work. How important is it to create an environment that is psychologically safe? And how do we even get to that?
I think you know what? It's very important to create, like you're saying, we spend the bulk of our time at work. So now imagine being in a work environment where being psychological, let me start by saying, what is psychological safety, right? Psychological safety is not being safe mentally, no. Psychological safety, it's about being in a space where you are feeling free to engage others and not be fearful that somebody will cut you off or not hear you out, right? So let me make an example in terms of why is it important to be in a space where you are safe. Now, let's say you are going through mental health issues. You are feeling depressed, anxiety, you are feeling all of that, feeling suicidal. You want to be in an environment. Being psychologically safe means you are in an environment where you are able to tell your leader or even people that you work with to say that today I'm not okay. And you find that a lot of people find it very difficult because the environment tells you we do not have time for that. We do not have time for that. You know, here the plan is how many tanks, how many whatever we go production is important. What is important is how many. We don't want near misses. We don't want any safety hazards. We don't want any that. So a person then thinks, if I should disclose, tell people that today I'm not well, something is not well. And if you think about it, life is life. Life happens. So sometimes you could be driving to work, you bump into somebody's car, you might kill someone. Psychologically, you are not in the right space. But will you be safe enough in the work environment to tell somebody to say, I'm traumatized and I am not able to go underground? So in most cases, you would find that people will not talk about it. So they'll just keep quiet about it in fear of the stigma, in fear of being judged, and then it's not a psychologically safe space. So you said most of the time we spend most of our time at work. So imagine if you are in that environment where the culture does not allow you to be yourself. If you are not yourself, it means internally there is a conflict, and if there's a conflict internally, you are in a space but you're pretending to be someone that you are not, and as a result, in the long run, it'll catch up with you because you spend most of your time being at work. And if you're not happy at work, where else would you be? Because this is where you spend the bulk of your time.
Lerato, everyone at work looks fine. Not only do they look fine, you ask, how are you? I mean, the standard answer is, oh, I'm okay, even when they are not okay. Why is that? And maybe touch a bit on masking and how we should really, as an industry, work around that.
Okay, so basically, I'll just make an example. We spoke about how mental health is now a buzzword, right? And it being a buzzword, a lot of people then think they know what mental health is all about. But do we really know, and can we really identify what mental health is all about? So what you would find is that in a lot of times, a lot of people would rather, they're not comfortable. To be honest, sometimes they're not comfortable to share their personal problems with other people. So what people would rather do, they then create a mask. So a mask in psychology, it is something where a person comes to work but does not really show their real emotion. Right? So they pretend. So this is a defense mechanism that it's not like they tell themselves. It's because, let's say in the mining sector, the environment wants me to, when I come in, are you safe? Yes, I'm safe. Can we go and dig? But nobody ever asks you, but how are you? Yes, you are fine. But what does fine mean? We never go deep into finding out. Fine, it becomes a cliche. So what people then do would put on a mask to say, I'm a man, especially mining is a male-dominated environment. I'm a man. I don't want other men to see me as weak. So as a result, I will put on a mask to protect myself. Emotionally, I don't want people to know that I'm going through a lot. I've lost my mother. I've lost, financially it's not going well. And then people will go, let's say, underground. So like I say, the masking is a defense mechanism. The challenge with masking is that it makes it very difficult for other people to identify if you are going through a lot. Because why people mask, emotional masking, is because I'm so scared of being judged as an employee. I'm so scared of being stigmatized. I'm so scared of being maybe where they lower my position because they say, Lerato, you are not focused anymore. So I'd rather put up the smiley face and pretend to the world that everything is okay. But what the world doesn't see is that inside the person is cracking. The danger with emotional masking is that's why we find that in the mining space, we find that people, when they call in maybe the employee well-being program, they'll say, I'm going through a lot of alcohol issues, or I'm gambling, or they'll say that I'm going through financial issues, but they won't share that with anyone. Privately, confidentially, they can share with the counselor to say, these are the things that I'm going through stress. The environment is not giving me tools of trade, but I'm so scared of maybe voicing out my opinion to my supervisor, because if I do, then I limit. It's a career limiting move. So there's so many things that people go through that they don't talk about, so they would rather mask it. The danger in the long run is that a person becomes suicidal. A person becomes depressed. A person becomes, they call it quiet quitting. They are there, but they are not there. Presentism, you know. A person is constantly off sick. And those are the things then that we identify, but we can't, because the person has masked. I think the biggest awakener, it is when we find a suicide ideation and successful suicide in mining. And people will be surprised to say, but how did that happen? How did that happen? That bubbly person. Or we did see that Lerato was being withdrawn a bit, but we didn't realize that it was this intense, you know? So that is the danger with masking. And unfortunately, that's why we sometimes say, when we talk about mental health, shine the spotlight on mental health. Because if we do not, then people do not know about it, especially the masking. People really do not know about masking and how it impacts the mental health. So how it impacts the mental health is that there is a conflict inside of you. You're not really who you say you are. So you're not authentic to self. If you're not authentic, and imagine wearing a mask. Imagine during COVID when we wore masks for the whole day. At some point, you're like, I can't breathe. You can't wait to take it off. And people can only take off that emotional mask when they get home. And the surprising thing is, when you are at work or when you get home, you become then a monster to your kids. You do not have time. Can you see how then the workplace, the stress that you have maybe in the workplace, might have impact on your personal life? Or you would find that certain stresses that you have in your personal life will then have an impact in the workplace. But where do you hide it? You then hide it behind a mask. And only then will you, your family members, or even the employer then find out that actually there was something wrong. And we only find it out a bit late, when a person has either committed suicide, or they are now highly depressed and they are now have to go to an institution and stuff. That's when we only pick up that something has always been wrong.
The reality is, mining is quite dynamic. It's so busy. It's so loud. It's one thing after another. And you did mention the productivity expectation, the rates, what you are expected of in terms of your leadership and deliverables. How do we see through the noise, Lerato, to support our colleagues and employees? And I mean, maybe just assist there and around, how do leaders, in spite of the noise, identify practical stuff that could almost lead to understanding that their team members are not okay?
I think what is important, especially in terms of mental health, we firstly need to acknowledge when we do not know. So mental health is broad. Right? And mental health, a lot of people think mental health is clinically, they think, oh, it means this person has bipolar, schizophrenia. So that lack of understanding. First of all, we need to be fair and honest to ourselves. As people, as leaders, as, you know, generally as community, to say, we don't know, we don't understand. And once you don't know, then what is the best thing? Educate yourself, right? So with education, mental health is also very broad. You can't say two people can be depressed, but how they present the depression might differ from person to person. So it is important. For an example, how do you then identify as a leader? There are certain things. I always use a model that is called the iceberg model to identify behavior, to help managers. I say, think about it. Think about the iceberg. So as in the iceberg, the only thing that you see is the tip of the iceberg in that ocean, just the tip of that iceberg, which is just 10%. What is the tip of the iceberg? It is absenteeism. It is presenteeism. It is sick leave. It is maybe behavior. Oh, Lerato's behavior has changed. Oh, Lerato this and that. That's the only thing. The way she interacts with people, interpersonal relationship, she's constantly angry. Harassment, bullying, victimization. That's the only thing that we see. Tip of the iceberg. But what managers or line managers need to think about the most is what lies underneath that iceberg. What sunk the Titanic was not the tip of the iceberg. What will sink employees is not the tip of the iceberg. It's not what you observe. But you need to also be interested in what lies underneath that iceberg. So if let's say an employee is constantly not at work, she behaves or he behaves in a different environment, even in the mining space. We work in teams in mining spaces. So it's not like it's a very broad where you're just working with people that you don't know. So within your teams, you know different behaviors, you know different personalities. But when you start seeing differences or changes within that person, that's where you need then to start saying, it's either it could be a friend or a leader to say, but are you okay? I've picked up a pattern of certain things that you are doing and it's not really, you're not really yourself lately. And obviously leaders and managers are not trained in the psychology or social work or wellness space. So the best thing is to be empathetic. Firstly, be real, be authentic. You can, as a leader, say, I do not know much. And I don't want to say things that I'm not clued up about. But I am human and I pick up that something is wrong. If an employee comes to you to explain that I'm going through a lot, do not first judge and say, oh, this one. Again. There's a lot. 3 days. You come and then now you come in with a story. Hear a person out. And now from the well-being space, this is our specialty and stuff like that, we would then identify what are the underlying. It's either sometimes underlying issues could be the workspace. It could be a lot of work-life. There's no work-life balance. Fatigue. People are traveling long distances. So they're fatigued in the mining environment. People sometimes live very far from the mining space. So fatigue is a thing. The shift system. As an environment in mining, are we coming up with a shift system that will be ideal, that will give people enough time to sleep, resources, are there resources? Because if there are no resources, then it's a challenge. Is the environment psychologically safe? So for an example, if there are certain things that are not available as tools, am I able to say to my boss, there are certain things that I'm missing without the fear of somebody saying you'll get cut because you talk too much. So that is also very important. So the underlying could also be that. Do I have a relationship with my colleagues? The other underlying could be personal issues, finances. It could be relationships. You would find in the mining space, relationships are the biggest thing. After relationship, it's intimate relationships, personal relationships with their respective partners. Things are not going well. You'd find it's family. So those are the trends that we see in mining. A lot of people, when they call in to say, I've got challenges, it's stress, personal issues, workplace relationships, family, the top 3. And then lately, after COVID, something that is coming up, it's adjustment challenges. People are being challenged with the adjustment. I've lost my mother. I've never thought in my life that I'll cope. And you're a man, you're supposed to cope, or you're a woman. And those are the trends that we are constantly picking up. And then mental health comes in. Sometimes it comes in as if it's there at the bottom. Why? People are still afraid to talk about issues of mental health. But if you look at these other issues, you would find that it's easier for a person to rather say I'm stressed than to say, actually, I'm feeling a bit more sad. I am more anxious. So they'll rather say, no, I'm just stressed. I don't know, maybe it's work. But when you dig a bit deeper, that's why I said the iceberg model. That's when you pick up that those are the issues that it would be important to help employees with. So maybe from the well-being then perspective, employee well-being program, what would then happen when as a manager you just identify? The second thing, as a manager, you just need to, can I train myself, capacitate? You've got programs, policies are there in the workplace, or either the employee well-being program will design a step-by-step guidelines to say how to help supervisors identify troubled employees. There's also workshops that, you know, as a supervisor, you need to open yourself up to say, let me attend, let me see what is it that I can learn. And let me not just judge and say, yeah, when you're an alcoholic, you know. But if I attend trainings proactively, these trainings, they proactively help you or any line manager to say, okay, once you know about these things earlier on, it will be easier to identify. So well-being is more about, let's identify things proactively before they happen. So instead of being reactive. So we're not in the business of being reactive, because once already mental health happens, then already we are reactive. And then the other method is through medical surveillance. Now medical surveillance, the beauty is that it does not only look at the physical well-being. So within the well-being space now, and obviously employee well-being, it's a program that has been organized by the employer to showing care for the employees. So under the medical surveillance, there's also we do surveillance, mental health surveillance. This is where proactively we pick up cases before a person can say, now I'm in the deep end. So already if we pick up risk trends or a risk, something that says no help here before it becomes too late, we then pick up cases then before a person calls in, we'll then say, how about, you know, if you can go through this well-being program to get assisted. So those are the type of things that leaders or managers can do. And if they are not knowledgeable, more than welcome to refer. Don't sit, you are not a counselor. Don't sit with something that you've never gone to school for. But the biggest thing is just be authentic. Be authentic, be empathetic. Those two key qualities will go a long way, you know.
Look, Lerato, and listening to you, it's almost like leaders cannot afford to ignore this. And I guess it takes intentionality to even identify. I mean, forget me trying to be a counselor. To identify, I need to be conscious of the fact that I work with people who go through a lot. Maybe just a message to people who are in leadership position. What risks do they sit with if they fail to be in a space where they can identify, or not even give themselves time to, even if it's understandable that you're too busy, you've got so much stress yourself, which we'll get to, but the risks that will sit in the mining industry and with them as leaders when they fail to identify and even act on about.
I think the risk in mining is quite huge.
Sure.
Or the impact of the risk is quite huge. The risk, first of all, in mining is safety. Safety is a buzzword, right? It's a big thing. So if employees are not taken care of, the risks are higher because these people then will not concentrate at work. Now we have more hazards, accidents, near misses, because I'm not here. I am present physically, but psychologically I'm not here. Secondly, if the risk is if as a leader you think it's personal issues, I normally use using the phrase, a person is like a car. If one tire is not functional, I'm not saying it's flat. I'm saying there's just there's a puncture. The way the car will then move will be different to a car that's fully functional. So if they do not identify this risk quite early, it means the workplace is open to more danger, the more absenteeism. So with more absenteeism, it means the employees that are left behind, that are at work, there's more work for them.
A risk itself.
That is a risk in itself as well. So these are the risks that leaders, if they do not give themselves time to capacitate themselves, even to capacitate employees, right? Then these are the dangers that they are prone to in the especially in the mining environment. Fatalities, that is the biggest thing that we pick up. People become complacent, and you ask why. Mining, I know mining is big in terms of these are the rules, but you would find that people would forget the rules. How do you expect me to be? Let me make an example of alcohol. People know that alcohol is a no-go area in the mining sector, but people still come to work highly intoxicated. Why? Because we have failed to identify them earlier on to say this particular individual is going through a lot, or you see them, but because they're a hard worker, I don't want to give them time off to go and see a counselor and whatever, because then it will impact my team. Proactively, you see it, but you ignore it, right? In the long run, you don't realize that this person is maybe getting into deep depression. Once they get into deep depression and anxiety and stuff like that, the person is now suicidal. A person that's suicidal does not care. They are in a world where nothing matters. Now, if you are in that world where I don't care, do you think they will care about, well, I'll come to work intoxicated, so what? If I get caught, I get caught, and if I don't, whatever, I did not get caught. So this person so those are the risks. If one person is a risk, they are a risk to others. So those are the biggest things that the mining environment will be exposed to if they do not take an extra effort in terms of identifying troubled employees early or proactively identifying employees. So it's the risk of losing losing productivity, losing people, high risks, high accidents and stuff like that. Everything that we're trying to prevent, it will not work if we do not give ourselves time to also focus on mental health. And also, we should not also say, well, our focus is just work. We should also take into consideration as leaders to say, mining, take into consideration that personal issues really have an impact. So even programs, let us not be stingy in terms of paying for such programs, because it will benefit the employees in the long run. So you would rather have a very productive, healthy employee, because they will be beneficial for you in the long run. And then it will create that culture, the morale of care, the morale of I want to be here, teamwork and stuff. So it will be more beneficial if they can pick up such risks earlier on.
Talking about culture, Lerato, workplace culture plays a pivotal role in the well-being of from So in a belt culture environment, you are likely to have more troubled individuals. How do you, particularly from the well-being space, intervene? Because it's one thing to have one employee coming to you and say workplace is like this and that, because immediately they tell you that, chances are the whole or most people at that same workplace are troubled. How do you intervene in spaces where the culture at work is so toxic, because it's a sign that a bit more people are actually troubled?
So in that instance, so what we would do from a well-being perspective is I hope it doesn't come when it's already late, because the aim, like I said, of employee well-being program is to be proactive. So to come up with programs, for an example, such as harassment, bullying, and victimization, stress in the workplace earlier on before it happens. But let's say in a case it has happened and the work environment is toxic. In this case, then it's either employees would then speak out if it's safe, if and there are mechanisms of ensuring that employees speak out. So we either use surveys, pulse survey, just to check what is the pulse of the environment, heartbeat surveys, just to check what is the temperature in this environment. The other one is doing random dipsticks. So you don't wait, because if you think about it, surveys are maybe done once in 6 months and stuff like that. But dipsticks, this is another way of picking up that, oh, maybe something is wrong. The biggest thing also in the mining space, we've got what we call employee well-being champions. So these employee well-being champions are people that are simple employees that are volunteers, and they can pick up challenges in the work environment. So there's a committee where we sit together with the well-being champions, and such matters are then shared to say, what is it that is toxic in this environment? And if there are certain aspects that are toxic, then programs, we start developing programs for the workplace to say what is it that we're dealing with. Because, for an example, there are many things that can make a workplace toxic. So you can't use one approach or an umbrella approach. In certain areas, it could be, like I said, either the harassment, bullying. In certain areas, it could be the management in that area. And so we then design programs to make sure that it then fits the purpose of it. So that's how. And then the other would be then to train or create awareness in terms of employees in the toilet. You will see the 0800 number, so that if people are going through a lot, the workplaces should also give employees that platform, to express themselves and say, these are the challenges that we are meeting, or these are the challenges that I'm facing as an employee. And that in itself, because for an example, in the well-being space, they will give you a health risk trends report. That's when you can pick up, oh, in certain areas here it's toxic, so what programs can we then come up with? But like I've said, the biggest thing in wellness is, let us come up with programs before the toxic environment becomes viable. Policies are the biggest thing. So from the well-being space, you make sure that leaders adhere to those policies. Another method of how to assist is create a culture. And how do we create a culture? Wellness cannot thrive in an environment where it's not led by leaders. So if leaders are not visible leading the employee well-being program or the culture of the organization, then people will think, oh, is it only for us? So like I said, well-being is very dynamic and broad. So the other methodologies of creating a culture that is not toxic is also bringing physical activity programs, whereby it is not only employees that are playing sporting activities, but we involve supervisors as well. And then in that spectrum, then people can feel, oh, well, I'm in an environment, we're playing soccer or netball or tennis or volleyball, and then they start engaging with each other on a human to human, and no longer supervisor to a subordinate. So these are some of the programs then that well-being can bring onto the workplace that will then change maybe the toxic environment. And also we also have we call it emotional impact session. Sometimes if we pick up that certain teams or yes, are toxic. They say one rotten potato spoils the whole rod. Sure. We then have team interventions that focused interventions that will focus specifically on that team to say what are the challenges here, because every workplace, especially in the mining sector, we try by all means to bring in the culture of care, the culture of being resilient. So how do we then create that? This is how then well-being tries to assist the employer in ensuring that becomes fruitful.
Sure. And we did touch a bit on the fact that dominated industry, and I mean, culturally, men, they don't generally open up like women do, and they'd rather not talk. And we know that. How do we tailor our approach to support them, knowing what we are sitting with as an industry?
Okay, so like I've said, since COVID, there's been a lot of changes.
Sure.
Even in the mining environment, we are seeing changes. Yeah. So I'll make an example in terms of trends. Before, you would see that a lot of men were not coming through.
Yeah.
But with the COVID, when it came through, there was a lot of awareness sessions.
Yeah.
There was a lot of awareness sessions. The workplaces would then give wellness, employee well-being program, the space to say, run your programs. And through the proactive trainings, then men could have discussions in those workshops and talk about issues that are pertinent to them. Gender-based violence, yes, it's a private issue, whatever, but it could be, it was brought in, or these are the issues that can be brought into the workplace. So they start finding spaces where they are now engaging, and they then realize, oh, I'm not the only one going through this. It's somebody else. And so with the well-being, there's also heightening the fact that men can show emotions. Yeah. Women can show emotions. So cutting, creating an environment that is diverse, inclusive, and it promotes employment equity. So the dynamics then starts changing even in the mining industry. You'd be very surprised. Sure. And now when we look at trends, we pick up that people that are utilizing the employee well-being program the most, it's males. Sure. Programs are now being, for an example, we are in November. It's a Men's Health Movember month. Yes, so men are coming out more to learn about, things that impact them. And I think the biggest way we as the well-being program make impact is giving them space to talk amongst themselves. Sure. And in that way, then they find an outlet, because in most cases, society has taught men to say, you are a sheep, you do not cry. Yeah. You are a tiger, man. You are weak. If you cry, you are weak. Yeah. But since, I would say maybe after COVID, but for me, I would say post-COVID, you are seeing the dynamics, the changes in terms of programs now opening up more to men and them engaging a bit more. So even the therapy sessions, they then do not see it as, something is wrong. Yes, at first it might feel uncomfortable for them, but they are more prone. And what we are seeing now also is with the proactive trainings for line managers, we are seeing line referring a bit more. Yeah. So they refer whether you are male, irrespective of gender. So as a result, when they then come for their counseling sessions, they then realize, it's not so bad. I am in a space where I can talk about me, or be in a space where, in a counseling way, I can say, I've got issues with my wife, and we rope in the wife. Now it's not just me. It's also helping my family, and they see the benefit of it. They tell others about it. Then it becomes that ripple effect. So now we're seeing a bit of changes in the mining environment in terms of people being assisted through the program. Yeah.
Lerato, let's look at leadership now. Leaders, male or female, are in a position where they need to be the ones coming up with solutions for all the industry problems we've got. But unfortunately, they are not exempted from the issues of mental health. In fact, they may be even more severely impacted. Let's talk about how do we help them, and what have you seen when it comes to leadership in the industry relating to mental health?
Okay, so with leaders, and you are right, mental health does not choose. It has no, it does not choose status, gender, ethnic background, age. Position, so it does not choose, right? But what we are picking up in the space, or even research is showing us that people that are in the leadership position are finding it very difficult to disclose or to be vulnerable. So it goes back to that issue of masking. As a leader, there's an expectation from society, there's an expectation in the workplace that everything of yours has to be together. And there's also that thing even in your mind where you tell yourself, actually, I must be okay. I must just lead. I must not show vulnerability. But a real leader is a leader that shows vulnerability.
Absolutely.
So how do we then assist leaders? And I'll tell you, it's a wall that we are trying to break. So the easiest ways, first of all, leaders during their meetings. So this is how we break into ensuring that they also get the awareness, because in most cases these workshops and trainings and awareness, they are just organized for employees and never for the leaders. So how we then do it from an employee perspective is we either do it during their meetings. You don't need a separate meeting, the one that you're already in. And then we have even videos, 3 minutes, 5 minutes video clips where it then talks about challenges with mental health and whatever, and we have discussions. And it is in those, whether 10 minutes or 5 minutes discussions, where leaders will then say, wow, this also impacts on me. Whether they share it there, some leaders are brave enough to share it in that space, others are not, but they would then, it will then create a spark to say, okay, I need help. Right? The other methods that we're using is the business has come into this rhythm of well-being moments, culture moments, safety moments. So leaders are then forced to talk about well-being moment. And in a way, this is where they then reflect on their own wellness challenges. But it is, to be honest, it's still a bit difficult to infiltrate that, because when you do training specifically for leaders, they'll feel, why are we going through this? So the mask is so real up there, you know, the mask is so big. But what I have seen thus far is that leaders are also becoming more open. The idea of we want to learn. They are faced with the challenges of employees who are also going through mental health challenges. So it's either you change your mindset, it's either I become stagnant or I allow myself to grow. So you would find in the mining sector, with the policies that are coming, policies that are enforced and people have to just make sure that they adhere, they also find themselves that, no, actually let us also try to give ourselves extra care. And the other simplest way of infiltrating a leader is to say, okay, if you don't need it, it's fine. But the well-being program is there for your wife, is there for your child. So if ever they are going through any issue, they've lost a dog, or your wife was in an accident of some sort, the employee well-being program is not just for you, it's for them. So when they see it working for their dependents, they start warming up to the program. So we just create, in the well-being space, you just need to be creative, innovative in bringing programs. If it means you have something that is called exec care, where you bring in maybe them testing at a certain time and you make it special for them, do it. As long as at the end of the day, the objective is for them to pick up that, okay, self-care is very important.
Lerato, essentially, park the wellness programs and mental well-being is our responsibility as individuals. For somebody who is in the industry or even working anywhere who is faced with mental challenges, stressed, depressed, but they are must. They make sure they show up, they deliver the way they should, but internally they are breaking. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, I'd say to them, at the end of the day, you are human.
Yeah.
You are only able to put up a mask for a certain time.
Yeah.
The reality is that you will not always have a mask on. So after a certain time, the defense has to go down.
Yeah.
The wall has to go down.
Sure.
And I always say mental health starts with you. So it's not whether you are a leader, whether you're an employee, whether you are a friend, a pastor, whoever, it starts with you.
Sure.
As soon as we start sharing stories as individuals, that's how we then realize we destigmatize this mental health.
Sure.
We then realize, oh, it's not only me, it does not only affect me. I can learn a lot from your story. So the more people share a lot of their narratives and share their challenges and share their success stories, I think it's a way of, this is where we can start.
Sure.
So like I say, it affects everyone, but it starts with you.
Yeah.
Self-care is also very important. It doesn't make sense to be preaching to other people.
Yeah.
Look at yourself, self-reflect. Life is about self-reflection. Who am I? Where am I going? What are the challenges that I'm facing? You can't pour from an empty cup.
Absolutely.
So if you do not start with yourself, you can't help the next person. It's like in an aeroplane, they'll say if it goes down, start with you. So the only way to help others in terms of mental health, it starts with your own mental health. You know yourself better than anybody else. You know when I'm not myself anymore. And you need to go back to, how do I find me again?
Yeah.
What is it in my life that is not going the way it used to? What changes have come into my life, and what is it that I can do to help myself? Who is my support system? Support system is very important. How do I create that work-life balance? How do I create that? So it's about trying to figure what also is within my space of control and what is outside my space of control. And once people start thinking about health from that perspective, how do I boundaries? Leaders do not have boundaries. People sometimes do not have boundaries.
Yeah.
Sometimes without boundaries, I cannot really take care of myself, because if everybody says, can you do this? Yes, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do it. So that's the first steps that you should do to to regain your mental health, like I said, self-care. Self-care is also about, when do I have my family time?
Yeah.
I can't always be working overtime and trying to make money for my family. Sometimes my family needs me.
Yeah.
And it's not about going to fancy places. I think the mistake that a lot of people do is, maybe we need a holiday, go to a park, a nearby park,
Walk.
get juice, dilute the juice, get fruits, vegetables, whatever. Go and sit outside. Go and play. That's another way of finding yourself. So I think as people, generally, we don't create those spaces for ourselves. If you feel that you've lost your voice as a person, ask yourself, where have I lost that voice? And try to find it again. If it means you get external help, if it means you find ways of creating indabas or clubs, or where you talk about things, rather do that. Unlike allowing yourself to die alone inside.
Look, Lerato, thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom, and sharing all the information you've gained for so many years. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for also having me. I'm honored. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mental health affects everyone, and seeking for help is not a sign of weakness, but strength. To leaders, invest in your people's well-being. It's not just the right thing to do. It's good business. A mentally healthy team is a safe team. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye and God bless.